Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us on a truly dreary day outside. It kind of feels nice and intimate and cozy in here, doesn't it? I'm April Fong, Deputy Personal Finance Editor at the Globe and Mail. And I'd like to welcome all of you here in the room today and those watching the live stream from across Canada to Next Gen AI Solutions, Strategic Insights for Business Leaders. I'm joining you today from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis Nation, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Toronto is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, and we are grateful for the opportunity to gather and learn here today together. Over the next couple of hours, we'll talk about how AI is transforming industries. A recent KPMG study found that 61% of the Canadian organizations it surveyed said they have implemented generative AI. Of those who have not yet adopted it, nearly 8 in 10 companies said they plan to implement it within the next 12 months. Firms are ready for the transformation. They don't want to be left behind in potential productivity gains or lose out on the chance to get that competitive edge. But many still are, of course, proceeding with caution. So, how are businesses pacing and adopting AI? And what does the future of AI really look like? What are some real concrete strategies that you can take back to your organizations after today to make sure that they don't get left behind in the AI race? And how do we do all of that responsibly, ethically, and securely? We'll tackle all of those big questions in our conversations today. If you're joining us in person, make sure to stay afterwards for some refreshments and networking after the discussions. And I'm pleased to be co-moderating today with my colleague Pippa Norman, innovation reporter for the Globe and Mail. I'd also like to take this moment to thank our presenting sponsor, NoviPro Group, for helping to make today's event possible. We're pleased to have a representative of NoviPro Group joining our program, along with other speakers who will be sharing their views independently. And with that, let's start off with our first conversation, AI indicators tracking adoption in Canadian business. Please join me in welcoming two fantastic speakers, Louvain Alfonso, General Manager at Blair Technology Solutions, and from Aldo Group, I'm delighted to introduce their Head of AI Initiatives, Armen Momedjan. Testing? Yeah.
Testing.
Okay, well, let's jump right into it and talk about your assessments of the current pace of AI adoption among Canadian businesses. Louvain, you have some specific data on this. What are some of the key findings you have?
Thanks, April. So let me start off by saying that my perspective is based on NoviPro Group's IT Trends report. It is an annual report that we develop with Leger, which is based on a survey of Canada-wide IT and non-IT business leaders. So in this year's report, AI ranked first in technology investment areas at 30%, up from last year. So it's obviously got momentum. And we also found that 20% of respondents had already invested in AI, so clearly it's on an upward trend.
Clearly an upward trend. Armen, you have an inside look, obviously, within Aldo Group, but how would you assess how AI is being adopted across Canadian businesses? Are there some sectors that are doing AI adoption better than others?
Hi everyone. First, thank you for having me here on the panel remotely. Yes, so I'm in retail. I work for Aldo, so I know that we started adopting AI in 2023. And when I was speaking to some some retail fellows, they were thinking about it, but we actually started doing it From my perspective, I think CPGs have probably adopted AI before everyone else, and maybe other segments as well. But in retail, I didn't know much in 2023, and I don't think that there is much today either, in terms of the types of AIs that we're developing, like sort of machine learning, not just generative AI.
Leuven, in terms of the research you've been looking at, what kind of AI are companies most interested in at this moment in time?
Well, so there's all kinds of AI. I'm not an AI expert, but from the ITRE's trends report, it's more generalized and covers everything from Gen AI to agentic AI to AI agents. So at the very minimum, you're looking at companies investing in solutions that are easy to get into, lower cost entry points, things like that. So I would say AI agents, more than likely.
And how are they using AI agents to make changes at their companies, transform what they do?
Right. So I have a customer who actually implemented. We didn't do it for them, but they implemented an AI agent solution in their customer service department. So they did it not to replace any human resources, but to complement. Essentially, they use the AI agent to intake prospects and leads, qualify them a bit more, share information with the customer, and if it progressed to the stage where it needed to be handed off to a person in sales, then it was handed off to a person in sales. So,
Armen, what's the potential you see with AI agents?
Yeah, it is really the next big thing. Everybody's talking about it. But maybe I want to take a little step back and say what we're doing at Aldo in terms of the AI use cases, and then I'll correlate that with how agentic AI can transform and bring it to the next level. At Aldo in retail, we have effectively built a demand forecast model. These are all machine learning models. They're not just generative AI. We also have some Gen AI, but mostly machine learning. We're also building a markdown optimization tool. We've built models for that, and also order fulfillment. Businesses in general, but especially in retail, they want to be quick to respond to trends, demand, and macro conditions, for example. And they want to have capabilities to simulate different scenarios quicker. Today, these are done in Excel spreadsheets and with multiple tabs, hundreds of rows, and AI can solve for that. But where agentic AI differs from these traditional AIs and even Gen AI is that it introduces a crucial ingredient of autonomy. This enables AI systems to move from just informing or suggesting or predicting to actually taking action. So they can handle multiple step complex tasks. They can chain together different sequence of decisions and actions to perform those tasks. They can learn and adapt over time on their own. This will transform retail because it will optimize, for example, supply chain, dynamic pricing, improving inventory management, etc. So these are very prominent use cases for retail. As another example, systems like agentic systems can continuously track, for example, product performance. They can trigger adjustments in pricing in store or online in real time. And the humans do this today, but it takes them weeks or months to review or realize. But the agents can do them a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently without stopping.
You talked about learning and adapting and having to do that in real time. We're also in a time of tariffs and the trade war and companies having to make decisions really quickly because things are changing rapidly. How has Aldo used AI to help ease those pain points?
Yeah, so the use case I spoke about, Excel with hundreds of rows, we actually experienced that. We don't have agents at the moment because our focus is really building these AI models. But when just like everybody else, when we saw these trade challenges, we tried to help them with the current tools that we had. And this is where we had the idea of building them a simulator that they could easily do quick simulations and figure out what the next best action should be quicker. Our demand forecast models actually picked up on the sales trends from weeks prior and helped us make better informed decisions for the upcoming weeks.
I'm sure many in this room would love to know what you see as the next phase of AI adoption. Armen, what do you predict? What do you see in your crystal ball?
Well, I think agentic AI is really the next big thing. This is the big bet at the moment, but it's easier said than done. You know, you need to have proper data, and there's a lot of challenges around there. But agentic AI is really the next big thing. It's coming.
Louvain, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So agentic AI is autonomous decision making. You're already seeing it in action with driverless cars and those types of solutions and applications. So I think we're beyond, or I think it's going to exceed what Gen AI applications probably offer. So you're going to see more of that.
What do you think, what's your take on the biggest barriers that you hear from Canadian companies in terms of adopting AI?
Yeah, so the Attitude Trends report identified, asked the question, and the respondents did give their feedback. So the biggest barriers are cost, lack of internal skills, and concerns about data security.
Those are all, serious concerns. Armen, in your conversations with others in the industry, maybe inside Aldo, what's the we can't adopt AI, this is too risky, usually about? What is that conversation usually about?
Few of them, but in my perspective, but I think data is the most important one, because if you don't have the data, then you can't really do AI. Forget agentic AI. So AI relies heavily on data. We know this, specifically quality of data. So many organizations don't have the right foundations in place. They have data for BI, for example, which is more reporting analytics, but that's not the same data required to do AI. Data for AI needs to be transformed accordingly. So this is really a big barrier or challenge. I would say another one is really change management, lack of leadership or fear of losing their jobs because they think AI would replace them, but we don't really view it like that. We see it as augmentation. Also, building AI systems in-house, if you decide to take that route, there's finding talent, which is very, very challenging. And also capital, to return on investment on the capital that you're investing to build these models, and also the infrastructure costs can run pretty high. So these are kind of the risks and challenges that are present across the board, obviously.
You mentioned change management and the fear of people losing their jobs. What kind of advice do you give inside your organization to, alleviate some of those concerns? That's to you, Armen.
Well, thank you. I can speak from experience. We went through this, and really the approach is, first you need to educate your organization, the staff in your organization. It needs to be top down. They need to have literacy on data, on AI, and you also need to start experimenting internally with quick wins. You can pick a few use cases and just do small experiments, POCs, and that will definitely help to build trust. The other thing as well is you can't just build these AI systems and just let them run freely. You need to have oversight on them. You need to sometimes even override decisions that the AI makes, which also has a benefit of training the model to provide the right information you're seeking for. So having really oversight on the AI, training your staff, doing quick wins, and always maintain the human in the loop. This is really critical for to have that trust factor and really adopt this frontier technology.
Having a human in the loop, that's good advice. Louvain, what's your take on that? What's important when it comes to change management and alleviating that fear of losing jobs?
Right. So before I answer that, I did want to add on the data point. In addition to quality of data, data privacy is important too. So organizations need to invest in data infrastructure solutions and governance practices, because with a lot of AI solutions, they have access to all kinds of data that belong to the organization. And so you want to make sure that that data is protected, the sensitive data is protected, and you build parameters and fences around that.
What could policymakers be doing to help ease some of these barriers or risks that you've been discussing? We talked about costs and data. Louvain, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so even though there's an uptick in AI adoption in Canada, we still lag from a global perspective. So there's a lot of work to be done, and especially in current economic challenges that we're facing. Canadian businesses need to be more productive and more competitive, so they need to understand that AI, a solution that's going to help them achieve that. There are some organizations, there are some sectors that don't believe AI would make a difference to them, and so it's my belief that if they don't conform to what the market is thinking, they will be left behind. So,
Armand, your thoughts?
Think
Is there anything
education.
that, what should policymakers be doing to help ease some of those challenges or barriers to AI adoption?
So they need to fund more startups, in the private sector, and I think educating, including AI in the education system somehow, and looking AI as more of an infrastructure. I think Canada has made some strides in terms of investment in AI. But I think education and funding more startups, fueling them with capital if there are good ideas on the table is definitely going to propel and put Canada on the map in terms of leaders in AI.
Okay, so funding for startups and having some earlier stage companies help us to innovate in AI. I want to end off. We've got a couple minutes left with a call to action for some of the business leaders who are in this room. What's your call to action for them to not fall behind in adopting AI, but to also do so responsibly? Louvain, let's start with you.
So I would say start the process where you're understanding how AI is going to help your organization, have a clear understanding of what you want the outcomes to be, figure out the ROI, figure out the payback. With cost being a barrier, there are programs out there, government programs that do fund innovation like this. So I think people need to get moving on that to understand how it's going to help their business, whether they implement it in the near term or in the long term. It doesn't matter. I think people need to understand how AI is going to help them and move towards that.
Great, thank you. Armand, what's your advice to leaders in this room on how they can make sure that they don't fall behind in adopting AI?
Be curious. Be curious. Talk to people. Talk to people who have done it. If you're in retail and you're unsure, you have questions, you can reach out to me. But you need to adopt this technology or you will be left behind. This will give you a competitive edge and you need to embrace it. And you just have to be curious and not be scared of it. And take baby steps, as I said before. Experiment, POCs, you'll get there.
Get the funding that's available, that's out there. Be curious. call up Armen. He's going to give you some advice. Those are some great takeaways. Thank you so much for this fascinating conversation. But we must leave it here. Let's hear it for Louvain and Armen.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. As previously mentioned, my name is Pippa Norman, and I'm the innovation reporter at the Globe and Mail. And I'm delighted to be here today to help facilitate our discussions. We're now going to discuss AI in action and highlight some of the top strategies being implemented by business leaders. We have some great panelists ready to share insights. Joining us is Amir Sayegh, Associate Vice President of Data Advocacy, Privacy, and Product Analytics at Geotab. Next, we have Alan Lau, Operating Partner and Co-founder of Two Small Fish Ventures and the co-founder of Wattpad. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. Fotaini Agrafiotti, Senior Vice President of RBC Borealis and Chief Science Officer at RBC. Thank you all for joining me. Hello, there we go. Okay, thank you so much for being here, everyone. Okay, we're gonna get right into it. I would like to start by asking each of you, Amir, we can start with you, to give me a firsthand example of how your company, and Alan, either Wattpad or perhaps one of your portfolio companies, are using AI today. So just a concrete example of how you're using AI.
Yeah, happy to provide an overview. Sounds good? Okay. So just to give you a back of the napkin understanding of who Geotab is, so to explain how we're using AI. So Geotab is a Canadian technology leader. And we're based out of Oakville, Ontario, and we build technology for fleet management. And we've been a big data company for 25 years, so before big data was a thing, because we're collecting vehicle from 4.7 million connected vehicles. We're processing 70 billion data points a day. So that puts us in a unique position of having been a big data company for 10 years, a big data company for 25 years and an AI company for 10. To answer your question, as a result of doing all that, we've learned AI. So we have 3 learnings from AI and how we adopt it. So the first is, we've been using AI, like I said, for 10 years to make drivers safer, by focusing on road safety, vehicle safety, by looking at using machine learning and classical AI techniques to predict unsafe driving behavior and all of that. The second piece is, as a lot of people have been thinking, is enhancing customer service and customer experience. So we have initiatives for chatbots to support customers, but we've also invented our own LLM that will go in and query data on behalf of the customer. So it's a data analyst in a box, if that makes sense. And then finally, internal productivity. We have a very big mandate for all of us to be using AI on an ongoing basis and advocating for it and using it. And then a bonus fourth one is doing all of the above responsibly and in a respectful manner.
Okay, Dr. Fotaini.
Hi, everyone. Wonderful to be here, especially in this weather. Thank you for coming in. This is, it's actually a very exciting topic and one that we've been at for quite a while at the Royal Bank, way before, I suppose, the emergence of Gen AI and GPT and the exciting times around it, which of course was renewed interest in artificial intelligence. But we go back also about a decade, I would say. We've been using data to make decisions in our businesses, across all of our businesses, frankly. We invested in machine learning and state-of-the-art AI technologies because we really felt that there was an opportunity to help increase accuracy and deliver better performance relative to what was more traditional statistical approaches that data analysts would be using for their workflow in a bank. And so some of the milestones prior to Gen AI that were quite big for us and big proof points for the value of machine learning in a financial services environment were, a couple of examples are Aiden, which was an electronic trading product that we launched a few years back in our global markets business, and it uses reinforcement learning, which was a science that was invented here in Canada at the University of Alberta in Edmonton, and we took that technology and we really saw an opportunity to leverage that to make autonomous buy-sell decisions for equities in the stock market. And so we looked at how we can have agents observe the market, understand that environment, and understand what kind of actions they can take that would alter that environment as a result, but drive towards a very specific outcome, a stock price or delivery at the end of the day as we close the desks. And so we've been launching this technology across our clients. It's now globally, it's one of our go-to platforms for all of our equities trading in our business, and it's been very, very successful. We're very proud of it because it was a Canadian invention, and we got to see it all the way through to create value for our clients. And it was a big milestone for us. In our retail side, for our retail clients, we've been looking at technologies that help understand and personalize experience in our mobile platforms. And so looking deeply into how our clients are transacting, everybody that banks with RBC, they will very often tell us, you know me, I've been with you for a long time. When we are detecting fraud in their accounts or advising them, they have the expectation that we deeply understand them. And we can do though in some parts of our business that are very, very high touch, but at the scale that we're operating, we're really looking to leverage technology to provide that personalized experience. And so we're predicting cash flows on our platforms. We're understanding how are our clients spending their money? Are they making decisions that will lead to an outcome where they may run out of cash before the next paycheck comes in? So we make these predictions and we flag them early. We also monitor patterns of how people are transacting and how we're sending money, how we're paying bills. And we're doing so in a very, very individual way. And so if you bank with us and you try to wire money or pay a bill that you haven't done so, it will observe, traditionally, it will observe you do that in the background, and it will flag it to you to say, are you sure you want to send this much money to that person? Or are you sure you want to send that to that individual? And so out of normal patterns are very important for our clients. And this is where they will call us up in our advice centers and they will say, you should have known I would never do that. You allowed me to send that money over. And the cost to business, the client experience, when something goes wrong and it's financial impact, and it's also very personal. And so we're looking to understand these behaviors in the background and support as these transactions are happening. These are just some of the examples that were there before the Gen AI wave came in. And so when we're very excited about generative AI and large language models as well, the reality for our business is we have some language data in a bank. We communicate in language, we write emails, we have long documents, we record conversations from our advice centers to help us understand what's going on with our clients. But our domains are more on the data side around transactions and market data and risk. And so our portfolio today, when it comes to AI and Gen AI, is well balanced between the two. When it came to Gen AI, we understood that there is new risks that come with that technology. And so the decision that we made off the bat was that we would only use the technology in the back office to begin with in support of interactions with our clients. And so we've leveraged and launched and scaled the use of Gen AI in many parts of the bank. The advice center is a great example of that, where we would, as you call in and you have a question about your account or your financing or you're looking advice, usually what happens on the call is someone will have to put you on hold, they will have to go find the right policy, read through the procedure, and if I show you a procedure document in a bank, it's this 500-page long, no one likes to read them, but you got to get to that information quickly and you got to get it right. And so that was something that Gen AI can do fairly well. And then with the human oversight, of course, on top of that, we really helped them get to that answer faster. We spent about 40% of the calls finding information. That's very, very expensive for our clients and for us as well. And it's been one of the areas where we've deployed Gen AI quite successfully, again, primarily in the back office.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, Alan, I'm gonna throw to you. And again, this example could come from Wattpad or it could come from one of your portfolio companies.
Perhaps I'll share a few examples, maybe Wattpad first. In case you don't know, Wattpad is a platform for people, for readers and writers to read and share fictional stories. For context, we had, when I was running the company, we have roughly 100 million monthly users, and we see 1 million chapter uploads per day from people around the world. They're writing romance stories to science fiction and everything between. So as you can imagine, there's a huge amount of data that we see almost like every minute. And without AI, we just couldn't handle it. So we became an AI company, started to build our first model, I think around 2013, almost like 12 years ago. So that was game changing because AI could simply do what human could not do at the time, which is looking at billions of data points per day and figure out which story is the best, which story would take off, which story would be movie worthy, because we actually took some of the best stories on our platform and turned them into TV shows and movies. So this is a very good example of AI can do something that human, even if you throw 100,000 human, 1 million human, and it simply could not do. And I would also highlight perhaps a few portfolio companies really quickly. There were two that we invested almost a decade ago. One is called a company called Benchside. They're based in Toronto. Keep a long story short, they use AI to help pharmaceutical companies to discover protein. As you can imagine, they are also dealing with billions of data points, and protein discovery is a very lengthy process. But with their technology, they can shrink from years to weeks of like a new protein discovery. And nowadays, almost 18 out of the top 20 pharmaceutical companies in the world are using the product. The other company also invested, I think 9 years ago, is a company called Ada, also based in Toronto. They are, nowadays, it's actually pretty easy to understand. They are customer support chatbot. They can handle, I think they already handle billions of conversations per month. And they're also expanding into voice conversations. So a lot of the, as you can imagine, customer support interaction, whether it's chat or voice, they are could be very repetitive. So have a well-trained model can actually streamline the operations a lot, so that the human beings could handle the edge cases, the multiple cases that the chatbot cannot handle. And then I would also like to mention one company, also Toronto-based. Interesting enough, somehow most of the companies are based in Toronto. It's a company called Ideogram. It's an image generator. We invested literally, started talking to them like 4 weeks before ChatGPT launched. That was almost 3 years ago. That was a very interesting time. Nowadays, there could be, you see quite a few image generators. They are one of them. But the one thing very interesting is that they can uniquely put typography and image together. The multimodal, multi-image, multimedia type kind of image generation is it's very unique. There's a lot of technology and science behind this. I'll spare you all the details, but it's actually harder than you may think if you want to put a logo on a T-shirt of a human wearing on an image that says "I love Canada," because the text has to wrinkle with the T-shirt is easier said than done. So they are very, very good, perhaps one of the best in the world that can do this. And what's interesting is they not only created the model, but they also created all the tools that you can stay a marketing agency, a marketing team can include that as part of their workflow. So in a way that can potentially greatly enhance your marketing department's efficiency. And the last one that I wanna mention is a very new investment as a company called Gen C AI, GE and SEE AI. What they do is as you start to in a company, as you start to have more agents to work at different parts of your workflow, it's actually getting very hard to orchestrate that process. It's almost like in an orchestra. You have different agents playing different instruments, but when the orchestra is large enough, you actually need a conductor to orchestrate all the movements of the bits and bytes. So they created technology that can automatically help you optimize that orchestration, which could be very labor intensive. It could be, and especially AI is not like hallucination problem. It might not be 100% accurate. So with the right orchestration, they can do things, make the agents working together really well and efficiently, and also more accurately. So we're starting to see new opportunities like this starting to appear because companies are actually deploying agents already, and this type of second order effect or second order problems when you have a bunch of agents working independently but not working together really well. We need to see some technology that can help orchestrate that. So, I touched on quite a few things, so hopefully you get an idea of how AI is being deployed and used in the real world.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Alan. Okay, so those were all a collection of fantastic examples. But I'm wondering, for business leaders in the room, how do you go about identifying a use case for AI internally? Like, how do you decide when and where to invest that time and money into implementing that use for AI for any of the things that you just mentioned? And what would you, advise for others? Amir, we'll start with you.
Yeah, happy to provide some insight. So I think there's a few things to unpack. There's the need to think big, but there's a need to start small and start now. So we have to think where the future is going in terms of AI, and there won't be immediate payback. But in order to earn the right to continue to work on AI, you have to find the quick wins, or what Deloitte calls the crunchy problems to solve. And in order to find that, there's a few things that have to be true, which is, first of all, you have to have good data. So everyone here, we've been talking about big data and AI for 10 years. This is your last chance to organize your data. That's it. So we got to get our data. The data has to be there. If there's no data, no point. You have to have process as well. People kind of neglecting, like, do I have AI or a predictive model in my process? Will it become better? Am I ready to consume the outcomes of that? And then there has to be like an immediate pain point. So in the book Power and Prediction, they talked about, there's so much investment happening in the Toronto area in AI and all that, and they found that the only use case that actually took off was fraud detection, because banks know how to do fraud detection, and they are incented to do it, and they do it very well. So it's a matter of taking out one predictive model, putting in a new AI model, and with that, you're good. And obviously, as we're thinking through process, you have to have a human in the loop to make sure we're validating the outcomes. You don't just throw AI at problems and hope for the best. Can't be open loop, has to be this closed loop system where the humans are in control at all time.
So great. Dr. Fortaini?
I think it's important that as we mature with the use of this technology, that we get out of the world of doing use cases and nice to haves and exciting things with it to really investing in core areas and tie it to the bottom line, right? Like that's very important because it's very costly to actually scale an AI. It's not as easy as out of the box, plug and play as we'd like to make it sound like sometimes. Low code, no code, anyone can do it. All that is true when you're creating a proof of concept, but when you're really building it for enterprise scale and launching across our clients, it's a very different picture. We've gone ahead recently at our investor day. We've made a commitment to our investors that in the next 3 years, we will create up to $1 billion of enterprise value at RBC using artificial intelligence. We're very serious about it. We have a very specific financial target. We're tracking against that. And the way we're approaching this, our strategy is we've identified 8, 9 key areas that are mature enough that can deliver that level of, and have that level of impact using AI as an enabler. And so how do you identify these? So number one is, yes, data readiness has to be there. And now you got your warning, you go out and get that done, because there's no AI without that data. And if that data sits in systems that is locked in partially there and a little bit there and a little bit there, and it hasn't been unified, it hasn't been cleaned and organized, and it's trustworthy, then not good place to begin there. Second place is is there an expectation from our clients that we will use their data in the way that we intend to? And this goes beyond what they have signed up to. So when we sign privacy agreements with our clients for how we're going to use their data, that's one way to look at it. But at the end of the day, we take that back and we say, yeah, we're allowed to do that based on what our clients have given consent to. But do they expect us to use the data that way? And if the answer is no, I think that's where it stops. And then once we pass through that process, we talk with our regulators as well. We're a very regulated industry. And we have a conversation about our plans and whether we should be using technology that way and how can we align on testing, validating, verifying that it will abide by the way it's been designed. And third, the change management that comes with this. I could not emphasize this more. We've gone down the road, early days of AI, of building an AI and then shelving it because down the road you realize that, oh, there's this business process that wouldn't enable it, that works perhaps in an opposing way, or we weren't ready to invest in managing that change that would drive the same effect as what the AI would. And so we have to pull that back or it's going to have very minimal impact. So the appetite has to be there. The leadership has to be there to see it through all the way. And so, yeah, data and infrastructure. I would say that's very important too. Having enough compute capacity, whether that is on your premises or in the cloud, I think that's also very important. We can't underestimate that some of these models have a large footprint on compute, and that needs to be there to close that.
Okay, and Alan, how would you advise companies go about identifying use cases internally for AI?
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning. I'm actually in Edmonton today, speaking at Upper Bound. It's an AI conference that have 6,000 attendees. It's one of the largest in the world. And why I want to mention this is because it's not just AI scientists attending the conference. We are seeing from small companies, SMBs to larger corporations. I think across the entire spectrum, companies are very, very interested in learning and start deploying AI in the organization. So I think we are at a very, very exciting time. Anyway, back to the how should an organization think about deploying AI? So I think for the smaller companies and for the larger companies, I think the approach could be quite different. That being said, one common theme that I would encourage all the leaders to think about is when you look at AI, of course, we have to, like we just talked about, we might want to look at the small wins and look at how we can get some big wins as well. But what I do want to say is, if you look at AI, don't look at just purely digitization or automation of one part of your process. You have to kind of look at this holistically. And hypothetically, if you can start the entire or redefine or reshape the entire workflow of your company from ground up, understanding that not every company can do it, but hypothetically, if you were to do it, how would you redesign your entire org chart? How would you redesign the entire organization workflow? I think that could be a very good thought exercise, because once you have done that, then you realize, well, perhaps I should not be deploying AI to automate this part. Perhaps I should think about not having this part at all, maybe creating something new in the workflow. And that will give you a very, very different perspective in how you adopt AI. I think for the smaller companies, typically they have less legacy issues. They are more nimble, and they can perhaps really completely redesigning the entire workflow from ground up. And we are seeing some very interesting startups these days. They could be just two co-founders writing, perhaps building a SaaS product. In the past, you probably need to raise some capital, build a team of 5 to 10 people, and then use that to get to product market fits before you can start generating some meaningful revenue. But what we are seeing right now is perhaps a company with just two co-founders. They use AI to help them write the code, build the product. They use AI to do customer support. They do use AI to do the sales. They use AI, all generative AI, by the way, to do all the marketing for them on social media channels or other paid marketing channels. So they can keep the team very, very lean. In fact, some of the companies that we know, basically just two co-founders doing everything that I just talked about, and scale the revenue to multi-million dollars. Those may be the rare case, but in the past it wasn't even possible, and nowadays it's actually possible. So I'm using this example for to hope inspire you to think about what you can do in your company if you could design the whole thing from ground up, and perhaps that will change how you deploy AI or adopt AI internally.
Thank you. Okay, and cost has been briefly mentioned, but I'm wondering, when you're talking about these use cases, these great examples, how are you tracking the success of what you're doing and the return on investment of an AI implementation project internally? Mira, we can start with you.
So it's not simple. Let's put it that way. So there's let's call it the intangibles and the tangible ROI. So for tangible, you cut a process, you save time, you're good. You can actually articulate the time. Usually it's time savings, right? So, but then there's other cases when it's hard to track the ROI. And I'll give you an example. So if I were to say to you, how much time do you save in Gmail today with having it autocomplete your sentence? If I turn it off, you could say, I'm losing time. It's just that you're not tracking. So for those kind of cases, we have to rely on qualitative and survey-based assessments and some other indirect indicators. So for example, for all of our coders, we've deployed Copilot. But they couldn't articulate the value, so we had to look for indirect feedback, such as like surveys, or just looking at the number of code commits happening, the quantity, even some indicators of quality of code improving over time. And obviously for the larger initiatives, because I didn't mention this, but our CEO is an engineer and we're privately held, so we have a bit of agility built in. We are placing those long-term bets, such as building our own data analyst in a box for our customers, because it is the right thing to do for our customer, as opposed to worrying about the immediate payback and ROI. And by learning AI, we know that when the time comes for ROI payback, we'll be there and we'll be ready for it.
Great. And how about you at RBC? How are you tracking ROI?
Largely agree. For, I suppose, more traditional AI, I can't believe I said more traditional, but like non-generative AI, it's easier. It's easier because these are models that usually pre-existed, and then you bring something more state-of-the-art, I suppose. You can see the incremental benefit, you can measure that, and you can think of applications like detecting more fraud or increasing accuracy at a pricer for a product, or understanding lending risk better in our world. So all of these are very, very measurable, very specific measures. Now, with generative AI, it's a bit more complicated. Time liberated, we haven't yet seen at scale really touch that bottom line again. But there are some environments that are very, very structured, where time equates to money or opportunity, and you know that you can go at it with LLMs and really help enable that. The advice center is a great example. Like if you really do your math, a contact center, we call them advice centers in the bank. But if you really do the math and understand how you run an operation like this of 5,000 employees we have answering calls every day, we know how every second is, where it's spent. We understand how much cost it is we incur every second more we spend on the call. And so helping reduce that, the call handling time, maintaining customer satisfaction, I think is very, very impactful for the business. In other environments where it's more about help me write my messages faster, my communications to my team, or read the news faster, yeah, it will help free up time, but what do you do with that time? I think it's TBD. We just haven't seen enough of this happen at scale to know that it's going to have that level of impact. We've seen a lot of good evidence, though, so far, I must say, especially in the developer productivity side, helping coders like create code faster, checking it in faster, or there's many different solutions that you can use in the entire software development process there. So we've seen good evidence from that. I'm really looking forward to see that really help us reduce our overall application cost development across the enterprise. And so there's a little bit of an unknown on the productivity side of Gen AI, but certainly some very structured environments exist where it's a no-brainer that you can get good ROI out of it.
Okay, and Alan, throwing that question to you.
Yeah, I think this is well, if you look at AI, it's almost like a once in a decade kind of platform shift. The last one was mobile devices, and then the one before that was perhaps the high-speed internet, and then the PC computer, or when there was the two other platform shifts before that. The list can go on and on and on. And one thing quite unique about these platform shifts is these are structural changes. These structural changes, because kind of related to my previous point about reinventing or reshaping the workflow, this is perhaps once in a decade kind of opportunity for organization to completely rethink or think differently in terms of how they work. And in that context, for this type of structural changes, I would be cautious that the companies are putting too much focus on the ROI, especially the immediate ROI, because in a way you also have to ask the question, can I afford not to invest in AI? Just imagine 10 years ago, people, for the relevant companies, obviously, can I afford not to be a mobile company? Or 20 years ago, can I afford to be not to be internet company? Of course, the answer now in hindsight is, of course, we could not afford not to participate. And I think perhaps I would flip this question. Perhaps it's not the immediate ROI. Of course, for the small wins, automating a small part of your workflow and your organization, yes, you can measure that more directly. But I think if you are trying to think about AI and more holistically and kind of use this opportunity to reshape the workflow of your company, the question would become, can I afford not to? And that becomes table stakes, because if you don't do it and all your competitors are doing it, 5 years from now, it would be impossible to catch up. So this is almost like a baseline almost for as more and more companies adopting AI. This is just part of the business.
Okay. Alan, I'm going to throw this next question to you because I think it speaks to a few of the things you've already touched on. But recently we saw Shopify CEO Toby Lutke put out an AI first memo in which he instructed staff to demonstrate why they can't get what they want done using AI before asking for more headcount and resources. I'm wondering, should other companies be thinking this way? You spoke about picturing working from the ground up. Is that memo that Shopify put out, is that something that you think other companies might need to adopt?
Yeah, I think the answer is mostly yes. Perhaps I wouldn't say exactly like Toby said, but I think this is maintaining status quo might not work in a few years if you do this too incrementally, because again, perhaps using the internet as an analogy, the internet itself is the first technology that is real-time, free, connected with everyone globally, and that's the first technology that have that type of characteristics, and that completely changed the behavior, as we now know, more than a quarter of a century after the commercialization of the internet. So we are in the very, very beginning of the AI revolution, and AI is unique in a way that it can make decision, it can reason, it can capture cross-domain knowledge and make that decision, and quite a few other things that is very unique. It's the first time in the universe that, at least in human history, that we have this type of technology, and we cannot underemphasize how important this piece of technology is and how impactful it can be to any company. So as for Shopify, as a bleeding edge tech company, they kind of have to adopt this AI first approach. I don't think they have a choice. I think for many organizations or people, they would be perhaps rightfully worried about, oh, is AI going to take over my job? I'm actually very optimistic, because human beings are very, very good at finding new things to do. So using spreadsheet as an example, I'm pretty sure when spreadsheet was invented in the 80s, many of the accountants might be worried, oh, I don't have to punch on the calculator anymore, spreadsheet is doing all my work. But 40 years later, I think the world has more accountants than ever. So I really don't think the as a job replacement, certain jobs would change. And I think we can safely assume maybe 10 years from now, some of the jobs that we have today might not exist. But it's not a replacement, it's a job nature change. Like, for example, like a marketer, they have to be very, very good at prompt engineering, because they are not going to hand create all those copy or images for the marketing campaign. They're at their disposal. They have something very powerful, very useful tool that they can create, and it can shorten a huge amount of time when they without AI, they could be spending a lot of time on repetitive works. So in that context, quickly transitioning your company into more AI native under the right circumstances, I think is the right thing to do.
Okay, and Amir, I saw you nodding. I'm wondering for both of you, how do you, building off of what Alan said, how do you deal with employee buy-in, and what has, the reaction been like from employees when you're working on these projects, and yeah, how do you communicate with them?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I think we can all agree that becoming AI first is a no regret move, and it is the end goal for at least for all white collar work. And as a result of that, and sorry, I'm going to go on a slight tangent, I'll come back. Very similar to what Alan was mentioning, I was reading this fascinating BBC article about why it took 50 years, 50, for electricity to bring in the Industrial Revolution. And the reason for that was people were ripping out steam engine, putting in electric engines. Made no difference in the factory. But it's only when they discovered that they could build smaller, more agile, more efficient electrical engines and deliver them right to the hands of the worker, if they're doing sewing or doing something like that, that they were then able to unlock the power of electricity. So I think with the same vein, we need to transform how we work and how we do things. So at Geotab, what we've done is we're still AI first, but we've taken a slightly different approach of focusing on education and building tools for our employees. So the first thing we've done, I remember vividly, but I have 2 screenshots in a deck somewhere. Our CEO, it was an engineer, he's like, everybody must use ChatGPT. This was like end of 2023 when it first came out. And then a couple of minutes later, oh, and by the way, we have a generative AI policy that the legal team came up with, so please don't put PII in it, and please be careful and thoughtful what you're doing, but do it. So that we got full mandate from him. And then our learning and development team had continued to educate, continued to advocate for the use of AI. We're always learning by doing. And our CEO, we have a monthly town hall. He'll do an AI demo. Last time he showed us a marketing video he built of himself speaking in another language. So it's a lot of that leading by example as opposed to mandating and kind of dictating the use of AI, because people will naturally sign up for it. And then we're using the Google model at the moment, but people still want to ChatGPT because they were used to it. So we built our internal portal where you have your own selection of models. And then for each model, from a responsible AI deployment, we've specified that for this model, you cannot use PII. For this model, you cannot use confidential information. And then for this model, it's fully connected to our workforce. So we're taking more of the teaching and advocacy sort of approach to this, and our CEO has penned an article in the Financial Post about the need for Canadian business to use AI and to adopt kind of overcome any risk aversion we might all have and just go forward and use AI at scale.
Great, and Dr. Fortain?
This conversation is very interesting, and at the back of my head, I'm thinking it's important that we don't go into an identity crisis, especially for companies that understand their value proposition, that have existed for a while. We are not going to be AI first. We don't aspire to. It's not who we are. We've been in business for 150 years. We're successful. We are in business not because there is a bank act, but because our clients allow us to bank them every day and make complex decisions that affect their lives. And so we will use AI. We have ambitious, bold financial targets on AI. We will scale it 100% across every corner of the bank, but we're a client-first business. And I think that's the most responsible thing to do as you think about that technology and how you bring it to life. And so when someone calls in financial distress, I cannot see a world where we're going to hand them off to a bot. Never. If they're calling in to retrieve some information, maybe, but there's no world where I get to ask an employee, can a bot do your work, or then why do I need to hire more of you? Because we're a human-driven business. We will always be a human-driven, and that's what makes us successful. And so I love the sentiment and the excitement around asking these questions top-down. Everybody mandated has to use the technology. It's exciting. I get it. I've been in AI my entire career. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. But I don't think that the onus is on an employee to prove that they don't have a path forward in the company that they've invested their time in. It's on the employer to figure out how to path them forward, how to upskill them, how to train them, how to give them an opportunity to grow. That makes it successful between a human and a machine. Because I cannot imagine that I would take an employee that is client-faced, that has managed to stand in front of clients in very complex moments in life and tell them that they no longer may have a job. That's absolutely not the case. They will always have that job, and they will be powered by artificial intelligence in the background in areas where it makes sense. So just keeping it in perspective. It's exciting, but let's be balanced and understand how our businesses work.
Great. Okay. With the few minutes that we have left, we're going to end in a similar fashion to the first panel, ending with one practical piece of advice. Your chance to give a message to business leaders who want to implement AI. What's your short take? Alan, we'll go to you.
Well, kind of repeating a bit what I said. If you have not used AI at all, perhaps look at some small area and get a feedback first. So you get a feel of what it can potentially do for you, and then think about, go through that thought exercise and see if there's an opportunity for you to reimagine the business, the workflow. This is, in a way, a once in a decade kind of change. I wouldn't underestimate the potential positive impact. The impact might not be incremental. It can be very game changing. Of course, it's contextual. It depends on the nature of your company. Once you can go through that reimagination, then you can figure out the next step would be figuring out what to do. And I would like to wrap this up by saying, if you are not doing that, some of your competitors are doing that. So this is table stakes, not necessarily maintain your competitive advantage or enhancing your competitive advantage. This is the minimum that you almost have to do, because if you don't do it, your competitor will.
So at a business level, just to kind of replay everything we talked about human in the loop, organize your data, please. Think big, start small, start now. And then on a personal level, like what I end up doing is solving my own problems, not just work-related problems, like family-related problems. You want to organize your kids' softball league, whatever it is, use AI, try it. There's lots of newsletters, there's lots of YouTube videos telling you how to make money from AI. Watch them, because they're going to simplify all these concepts into ways that are actually very usable, demonstrable, and you can actually see what you're doing. So immerse yourself in the AI is probably the thing I would say to everyone. Try it and learn by doing. If you're doing it at the corporate level, then do it responsibly and understand what you're doing, but still do it.
Excellent points. I'll just pick a bit more on the responsible side of things. There's a lot of talk again about how easy it is to embed these technologies and use them and scale them, etc. And you don't need a lot of expertise. My mom can now write something with GPT and it can get it done. And the reality, though, of it is you can't treat these things as black boxes. And for critical business operations, they can do some fun stuff. But then when it comes to really critical business operations, it's important to understand the modes of failure. because they're not 100% bulletproof, and so testing enough for biases, risk, hallucinations, whatever that may be, make sure that that's part of the process. And it may be worthwhile hiring a couple, if not more, of experts in these domains. We got some of the top scientists in machine learning here in our backyard, in our country, at Vector Institute, Mila, Amy, but also across Canada as well. They do come, we have scaled training these people, and they do come into companies, they understand your domains, and they can really help you get into the inner workings of how these models work, adapt them to your data domains, because that's not always straightforward, but make sure you scale them in a safe way, so you don't find yourselves in the wrong side of history just because you scaled AI too fast.
Okay, so we'll hold the conversation there. Thank you, everybody, so much. I believe we have some time for a quick Q&A. So if anybody in the room has a question, we will come find you with a mic. Please raise your hand. And if anybody online has a question as well, we have somebody who's monitoring those. Any questions for any of our panelists today? We have one over here.
Any of you, like in terms of data quality, I think we talk a little bit about data quality and the importance of cleaning up the data. Any best practices in terms of not so much hallucination or how to treat it, but bad data, wrongful data, and misleading or misinformation goes through to contaminate data lakes and mess up models.
So it's interesting because the quality of the data sometimes is open to debate for definition, which is an interesting one. But what it comes down to usually is what kind of business practice was there in place when the data was collected and stored? And what we find a lot of the time is, especially for businesses that have existed for a long time, they weren't, these processes didn't get in place. They didn't happen because we thought that we're going to do AI at scale one day. So let's make sure we collect it, clean it, organize it. And so there's a way that you can collect data and save it in your systems and be like, and each employee has a different interpretation of what that field means. And I run into this problem quite often where we feel like we're collecting uniformly what everybody agrees is a specific metric. But then someone has a different definition for it. Oh, I was asking the client about that, so that's what I was saving, or I processed it that way. And so making sure that everything is, it's uniform. There's no missing values. It's a very critical one. If you can't have too many missing values at scale. And then cleaning it up and organizing and maintaining good data hygiene. Data goes through many systems along the way before it gets stored in a database. Each of these steps may process the data and spit it out in a transformed way. And so at the end, you need to really be able to drive that lineage of like what happened to that as it was flowing through to end up in your servers. And airtight data access management. Airtight, like who needs to access for what, at what point in time, and when does that access end?
Great. We have a virtual question, and then we'll get to another in-person question.
Within the context of growing AI through Canadian development, what are some of the security implications that leaders should consider when developing AI in their organizations?
Sorry, the question was security implications of deploying generative AI models. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. So a generative AI system, by default, is just like any other IT project. You need to have all these security guardrails in place. You need to be very careful. Where generative AI adds 2 more degrees of complexity. There's multiple, but the ones that are most relevant. One is it inadvertently accessing data that you typically wouldn't expose, but it's kind of surfacing. So for example, I'll give you a perfect example. You have an Excel sheet, you're using it, but ChatGPT will look in and figure out who the author is, what their email was. Maybe you wouldn't have looked for it. It's there, but you're not looking for it. So obviously that's one thing to worry about. So it's surfacing insights at a scale that we've never seen before. The other one is obviously hallucinations, where it's just making stuff up. right? And so that is another area of concern where it's giving that illusion of confidence and of knowing what it's doing when it's not.
Great, and we have one more in person.
So a great discussion, everyone. I had a question in terms of people starting to use AI in their role and potentially speeding up what they can do, decision making. How do you balance the whole idea of potential hallucinations and then also potential loss of institutional knowledge, because people don't understand where the answer came from? They're using the AI to generate their answer, but they're not necessarily understanding basic data information. As part of data analysts is that they've gone through the data, they've figured out the solution. I was having a situation where we were trying to persuade the person presenting the AI data to give us a reason why they've got that data, but they were saying, well, the AI generated it.
It's a terrible answer, I think. Terrible answer. I would say this is a real risk. There's no question about that. And our strategy is really focused on using it in the back office under human oversight, precisely for the risk of hallucination. But then you have the risk of human oversight. And yes, humans can become over-reliant, and yes, you can easily go on autopilot and let things through, right? And not do your part. So the way we approached this was, first of all, we provided company-wide training. So everybody at RBC that gets access to a Gen AI solution, they have to go through training first. They have to understand their responsibilities as they use that technology. And then we rely more on RAG systems rather than generic Q&A systems where you force the machine to not make up an answer, but find an answer inside a document you trust 100%. And we still bring that citation back. We force the human to look at it based on our UI. So there's a lot of things that go into that experience that make it a bit more bulletproof. There's editing processes, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think that there's a way to cover for these risks. And it's important to remember, not all models hallucinate equally. Right? And they're getting better and better. And so there's smaller models that are actually becoming more accurate nowadays. We've seen every new version that came out of OpenAI, we've seen hallucination risk go down. These are being very thoroughly tested as well. Can it happen? Absolutely. But I do feel that with enough controls around that and being mindful of which model you're using for what type of task, you're containing the risk of something going wrong quite well.
Great. Okay, we have to leave it there, but thank you, Amir, Alan, and Dr. Fotini for your insight. We are going to depart for a brief 20-minute intermission. You can take a moment to recharge, grab a snack, stretch your legs, and we will be back shortly. But please, a round of applause for our speakers. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Can ask everybody to take their seats, and we'll probably have some people filtering in. Okay, I hope everyone's enjoying their snacks. So now we're going to move on to a discussion about the ethical responsibilities, risks, and strategies for ensuring transparency and accountability when using AI. Joining us for this conversation is Dr. Sedef Kochak, Director of AI and Professional Development at the Vector Institute. So please welcome Dr. Sedef to the stage. It's bright.
It's bright, yes. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. And after a break, so I hope that you enjoyed previous conversations, and then I hope you enjoy our conversations as well. So we're going to take you through a little bit of like a ethics and risk and responsibility, but don't get scared. So we're going to make you that don't get scared.
Good. It's a good way to start. Yeah, I think this will be a good kind of counterbalance to some of the conversations we've had so far. So I'd like to start off with a pretty kind of broad question. What are some of the most common mistakes or oversights you see business leaders making when navigating AI security and ethics?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I guess like before we jump into what are the mistakes, so I will maybe like go over a little bit of what are the risks that we see, using, developing, deploying, monitoring the AI system, especially now it's like a generative AI system, because generative AI systems are now like generate new things, right? So we don't anticipate what they're going to generate. So one of the biggest risk is the ethical risk. I know that this is like a very, very concern, because especially the generative AI systems are very complex. And then, as I mentioned, they are generating new content. So then the high quality content that we don't know whether it's true or not. So, and then we don't know that the models have been trained on has maybe like ethical issues, like bias issues and whatnot. So those are like a big issues, and then ethical risk is really, really a problem. And then, accountability within that ethical, and also like a transparency is like a huge risk when we're developing and deploying and monitoring. So you need to be transparent. And then the second layer of risk is operational and technological risk. So from the technological and operational standpoint, the GenAI system function as black box. Although, all the research they are pushing the boundaries to find out, what are the explainability of this model, like how do we unlock this, black box model and whatnot, but they're still black box, and they often make it difficult to interpret and audit when it comes to the decision-making process. So this is also another, the operational risk. And then the third risk is, again, we talked about previous, like a panel, is like a privacy and data risk. So, which is a huge risk, and it's also tied to the security risk for sure. And, many GenAI models process like a sensitive data, and we don't know that data is like, have like any sensitive information and private information and whatnot. So those are, we need to be careful about those kind of risk. And then the fourth one is legal and regulatory risk. And then with the rapid adoption of AI, like we know that regulatories are a little bit stay behind. So then, we need to maybe bring our own governance team, of course, like, in every stage of the like ideation to development, the post-deployment and retirement of the models and whatnot. So those are, like a big risk that I've seen so far. And then when it comes to some of the, the mistakes that the businesses are doing. So at Vector, I'm not sure if you are familiar, Vector Institute is a non-for-profit research institute, but we also work with enterprise sponsors. Like we have all 5 banks and, manufacturing companies or whatnot. So we work with them to make sure that they have AI maturity and they have the capabilities and whatnot. So one of the mistake that they're doing is they treat AI governance and AI is like a one-time thing. So the mistake is first, for example, like launching model in a single ethics review, and then they said that, okay, so we had this review and we're done. So it shouldn't be like that. It should be continuous monitoring, continuous adaptation, and then looking at like a different perspective. Why this is a problem? Because like a generative AI, especially generative AI, uses like a lot of data, and then the live data is coming up, and then model train as they move, and then the generative AI models, they drift, time to time. So then one output may not be the same. When you ask like one question, the output the generative AI will give you today may not be the same tomorrow. So those kind of like mistakes that when you use those generative AIs, and then when you realize that, okay, so I've done all the reviews and then I'm done, but you're not. You have to go back and then look at again, and then if there's any changes or model drift or data drift happens when you use the generative AI models. But of course, like this, another one is, another mistake that businesses usually do is siloing AI risk to technical or compliance teams. So this is, like all the team needs to work together. So we oftentimes see that, the governance or, the ethical issues could be, or security issues needs to solve by like IT team or like, like engineering, like a development team and whatnot. But it is a mistake because like, the AI is a team support. So you need to think about who are the accountable throughout this journey, and then every time that you need to find a way to, again, do how those kind of like, the risk could be identify and mitigate throughout the journey. And then that oftentimes like, the business teams usually define a success metric when it comes to the ethics point. When you do your ethics review, we always think that like the code is usually has this like a data, and then data has like a bias and all that. But actually, we are accounting those like a technical teams to do their due diligence and ethics review and whatnot. But actually, it starts from way early, because when it starts like a business ideations, then like a manager or like a business unit who has that problem, when they are scoping out the ideating, when they're scoping out their use cases, in that time that ethics review should start. Because like when you're scoping, you may be, overlying or overthinking about the ethics. Like, you are maybe looking at the things indifferently. You don't countable, or you don't count like, some of the maybe underrepresented groups that you are putting maybe under risk. So we need to come all the way from the beginning to the end, and every step that everybody needs to be accountable. That of course, like, there are many ways to, and then frameworks out there to help businesses if they don't have any like a governance and ethics review or frameworks or ethics board, which is really important. I know that's like all of the academic institution has, when the researchers do research, they have to apply for the ethics board review if they are working human-related data. And similarly, I think like businesses, most of them, they might have like ethics boards. If they don't, I think like a starting point to putting those kind of like a council, AI ethics council, or like, like a working group, so then they can start reviewing all the processes. Okay. Like it's a little bit long answer, but.
Well, within that answer, you mentioned bias, and I did want to ask you, what should companies be considering when it comes to bias in AI?
What do they consider bias in AI?
Yeah, how should they be thinking about it and factoring it in when they're considering their security and ethics reviews and systems that they have in place? Where does bias factor into that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So as I mentioned, it starts from the beginning. As I mentioned, like, when the business units, they have a problem, they said, oh, I have this problem, and then I have this use case that I would like to pursue to like an AI team to get like a tool develop or model develop and whatnot. And then when they start doing that, the bias will start populating maybe, because like the team, like a business team, they need to think about, okay, so when they are scoping out this business case or use case, they need to think, okay, so I am entering, or I am, looking at like in a different perspective when I am scoping out this use case or business case. So am I counting underrepresented group? Am I counting any, bias related to maybe racial, like ethnics and whatnot? And then it goes to product owner, and the product owner, they they build their flow, right? Like, business flow, and then also move on to the technical team. And the technical team, when they start building their models, it's already biased, because if you don't count like a bias from the beginning, and then at the end, the data will collect according to the business case that the business owners will already scoped out, and then the data might be already biased, and you don't have maybe those kind of groups that's represented in the data, and then your model will be biased as well. So it's like a domino effect. If you don't encounter things at the beginning, so then it will cause a problem at the end, and then your model output will be biased as well. So what you need to do, what businesses need to do is, again, putting everybody is like maybe an ethics board, or like a bias check in every step of the game, starting from ideation to the data collection, from data collection to model development, testing, and after development and deployment, and then even like a monitoring. Because as I mentioned, with the Gen AI tools or Gen AI models, they drift because of the data. So when it drifts, so you need to capture that one as well. So this is like a whole life cycle effort that you need to think about.
Okay, kind of building off of Alan's point earlier about everything, kind of think about it from the beginning, it sounds like.
Exactly.
I want to move over to the environmental impact of AI quickly. What do we know about the environmental impact of AI, and is that an ethics issue? Is that something that companies should be putting forward to their ethics board if that's what they're choosing to do?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you, Pippa, because like environmental issue of the AI models is really important, and the sustainability is dear to my heart, because my background is sustainability design of software system at that time. So now I'm really interested in working on the environmental impact of AI system, especially now like a big, like large language models, because we know that energy consumption, water usage, and even the e-waste generation is really important. So there are recent, the publications and reports that, the transparency perspective is really important, like an ESG perspective and transparency perspective. And then I know that there are tools and techniques that the model, when you run the model, or you train the model, or you do inference of the model, that you can calculate your energy impact, like energy consumption, like water usage and whatnot. So those tools and techniques are new in a sense that in the AI context, but those tools and techniques have been around for a decade or two. So when it comes to like a software engineering time, so I was working at the modeling energy consumption of the software systems, like when I was doing my PhD, and now like a similar things like shifted to the AI, like how we can calculate, or like the using maybe the proxies and those kind of tools, like how we can actually calculate the energy consumption. But again, like those are usually seen as after the fact, unfortunately, because when it's like all the businesses are very much concerned about the performance of their model, the output of their model, and competitiveness of their, the tools and techniques. But when it comes to the real impact or the model impact afterwards, they don't think about real. So my suggestion would be like raising awareness is really important in this case. And again, like every line of code has its impact on social, on environment, and economic. So we need to think about this. And then, as I mentioned, there are tools and techniques that AI teams can use, and also not only like measuring the impact, but also how we can mitigate, how we can lower the impact of our models. So, for example, Dr. Fontini was mentioning about like a small models, a previous panel. So nowadays, like a small models, they're also very impactful. So we don't need to use like a humongous models, like, billions or millions of parameters, because it takes a lot of time and energy and water. But we can use like small models. So then, mitigate this environmental impact. Another way to mitigate the environmental impact, I was at the COP29 a few months ago in Baku. There were lots of discussion around accelerating computing. So there are optimization techniques that each of our the AI teams should know about, and then they could use those kind of optimization techniques to mitigate those kind of environmental impact. So. And one more thing, don't use don't use ChatGPT for just a simple math calculations, and don't use ChatGPT for asking what to cook tonight. But of course, you can use for more complex tasks. But again, don't use and don't ask ChatGPT what to cook for tonight. You can use your brain.
Some great practical advice. Yes. Okay, and earlier in our first panel, we touched briefly on AI agents and agentic AI. I'm wondering if we can kind of circle back to that. I think this is an interesting topic to chat with you about. Do AI agents create additional kind of security or ethical issues, especially as responsibility might be kind of offloaded to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. We were at the AI space. Now move on to Gen AI, a generative AI. Quickly move on to agentic AI, AI agents. So that's the journey was really fast. So then our security teams, we don't know what kind of scenarios that we are going to deal with, we are dealing with. I think, the agents will create an extra layer of security, yes, because they're autonomous agents. So they could impact one another, because when it comes to, the group of agents, and then one of the agents might impact to the other agents, and then they could start working, they're autonomous agents in a way that you program them, yes, but they are still have this autonomous behavior. So that will be increase a set of course, a security and privacy, and then the manipulation too. Because, you wouldn't know that the decision that one agent will impact the other agent's input. One agent's output could be other agent's input. So then the decision could be impacted because of that output is maybe malicious, or that output is, affected because of various reasons. So we need to think about those kind of the effects.
Okay. So how do you coach people through working responsibly with something that, like you said, is moving incredibly quickly? And what are some of the risks in perhaps the pace at which things are evolving, and when you're trying to implement it with people, but it's also changing every day?
Oh, that's a good question. So how do we train people? I guess, at Vector, yes. And several, of course, other institutions, they have their responsible AI frameworks. And also intergovernmental agencies, for example, OECD, and the others, UN, and Global South, they all have released different frameworks for responsible AI. And then what we need to do as a business, so we need to take either all of these frameworks and see which ones that it could applicable to your a business, to your culture and whatnot, and then start from there. And one of the biggest things that I've seen earlier as well is to AI literacy. So it shouldn't be at those kind of training at the onboarding. So you do the onboarding, you did AI literacy, and then you just leave your employee, along the way. But you need to look at what is happening out there, what are the risk and security risk and all that, and then you need to train and upskill your employees all the time. It is similar what you do with the AI lifecycle. Similarly, you have to start with working with your employees to train them with the AI literacy, not only like a foundation of AI, but also what that means to use or develop and deploy responsible AI practices. So, I like what somebody from Geotab was doing, like a experiential learning. It's good to have like a try new things, but you have to have your responsible AI practices first, so then your employees can try like different things.
I'm wondering, building off of a conversation that I had during the break, how important is it for that AI literacy to start with students? People who are coming out of universities, they're looking to get into the workforce. Is AI literacy something that we should be having at the post-secondary level and then in all sorts of industries?
Oh, that's a great question. So part of my role at Vector now is shifted a little bit before, but professional development. So we were working with our industry partners to train their employees, but also we have so many, as you mentioned, so the training should shift to maybe K to 12 even, they need to know about basics. They need to know about, because they've been using all of these smartphones and, ChatGPT and, various tools. So that they need to know what does this mean, how to use those kind of tools safely. And then when it gets older, what does it mean? How those kind of models work, not mathematically, of course, but what is the data? What kind of data that they take then as an output? How we could actually interpret how the data as an input, what quality the data they need to know, and then how to interpret the output. So those are really important to know, because when they join into the workforce, of course, they are, if they're not technical, so they also need to work with AI teams. So when they talk with the AI teams, when they work with the AI teams, they need to speak the same language, not the technical language, but they need to know the concept. If you are a project manager, you need to know how to manage AI project. If you're a product manager, as I mentioned, you need to know all the steps, and then you need to start building your own practices related to AI, because every step of the game, you are working with AI teams, even though you're not building AI tools, you're not building models, but you need to know what that models, how that model works, and then what is the implication of the output of that model. So that's why a literacy and training, AI training especially, is important when it starts your journey in your career.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what you said earlier about how understanding these systems and AI should be a responsibility that's shared across the organization and not just up to the IT team, for example.
No, I fully agree. And then when it comes to the governance, again, we account a one team, an AI governance team or whatnot, but there should be a different layer approach when it comes to the AI governance, risk management and ethics and bias, because it could be strategic level where the board of directors and in C-suite, and then the second layer would be a tactical layer where all the managers, mid-level managers, they need to know, and then the third level is actually who are doing it, developing machine learning engineers, AI team, data science team. All those layers needs to work together, and then every stage of the game you need to establish those frameworks and rules, but of course not establish once and then not to visit it. You need to revisit maybe every I don't know, we can do a 90-day sprint, for example, or every 30-day or every 90-day. So then see if there are any changes within the, the regulations, if any changes within the, the model output and all that. So this is really important to revisit every time. Of course, human in the loop, we previous panelists talked about this, so I'm not gonna go into that one.
Okay, great. And kind of helping to wrap our conversation up, I'm wondering, in the future, over the next few years, are there any ethics or security issues that you're anticipating that you might think you would advise business leaders to keep an eye on or perhaps watch out for?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talked about like AI agents, how they can impact each other, and then the output and whatnot. Like a emergent behavior in complex system, that is an issue, and it will be. Again, like what to look for is unintended automation of harms. Again, it will be now, and it will be in the future, because we are seeing now, but we don't see those autonomous agents or like a different agent system yet. So we are speculating. We see the models, yes, we see the agents are developing here and there, but we don't see yet, those are working together. But we are now anticipating those kind of risk. But of course, like, environmental risk, yes. So I'm seeing it will increase if we don't mitigate. So, as I mentioned, there are so many ways, but this should be a mandate, as you mandate with the responsible AI, and then also reporting is important, and then transparency. So I know that there are, as I mentioned, for example, the Hiroshima summit last year, they released like Hiroshima AI framework for those companies, like private companies, if they wanted to report how they use responsible AI and those kind of like a frameworks. And then last month, April, I know like we are deviating from one point to another, but I just wanted to make everyone know that, the private companies actually taking a step and then release those kind of like a transparency and the framework, responsible AI framework report. And then last month in April 15th, there were about like close to 25 companies released their report. And I'm proud to say that there only one Canadian company released their reports, and you can go and check. But there are, the companies who are releasing those kind of reports, so that we can see what kind of issues that they've been facing. And then I think it's learning from their experience is really important. Yes, your business might be different from one sector to another sector, or maybe like, the implication might be different, but lesson learned are really important. So once we learn from, others, best practices, it will show us like how we can mitigate those kind of mistakes. And then we need to be a little bit proactive rather than reactive. So when it comes to the securities, again, going back to your question, so I'm seeing those kind of, the risk again, shadow AI also another risk that I would like to mention, because, lots of people within the organization, they are using unauthorized tools like a ChatGPT or, a few others and whatnot, but those needs to be authorized, and then we wouldn't know that what kind of security risk that they bring if the employees is using those kind of tools. So those are that I can think of.
Great. Okay, it's a lot of learning from each other's mistakes, especially. Okay, we're going to end our conversation there, but we do have some time for a quick Q&A. So again, if anybody in the room has a question, we can come over to you with a mic. Just raise your hand. We have one there. And then we'll also, if anybody online has a question too, we have somebody monitoring the chat.
Hi. I did leave the room for a second, so you may have spoken to it. But how does the ethics of the AI move when a new CEO and board of directors come in? For instance, just as an example, let's say you've got a real Pollyanna board of directors with a, apple pie CEO, and then the company hires excuse my language, but a real hard-ass CEO and vindictive board of directors. Does the AI of the corporation adjust to that leadership, or does the AI sort of hold the ethics of the company and bring the CEO and directors into its pattern?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. As I mentioned earlier, so my recommendation will be like using a layered approach. yes, you have your CEO and C-suite and like a board of directors, and then the second layer will be their strategic, like they oversee the strategy, but the ones that are actually working and then putting the effort and then putting everything, like all the guardrails along the way, is like a tactical layer as well as the operational layer. So the tactical layers that we call it, like a mid-management team, like a product owners, senior managers and whatnot. They are the one who actually monitoring day to day, like a ethics, if there's any drift or any shift. So then they are the one who actually flag the things to the maybe like a C-suite level. And then the third layer is a operational level, actually, where the technical team, so they develop their models, they test their models, they validate, and they deploy it. So in that level, they also need to put all the flags and the monitors and everything, so then things will, let's say, will miss in the operational level. Actually, the tactical level could capture it. So if they put all of these as a layer approach, and then put it like maybe AI council on the top of it. Like I know that there are many companies, they are putting together like a small working group, as Fotinian was mentioning, hire subject matter experts, like hire ethicists if you can. So then every step of the game that you need to bring those experts, so then you understand like how the AI output will impact. So I think this is really important to work with the subject matter expert. Again, you need, yes, like everybody is saying that we have like an AI, the talent scarcity, but whatnot in terms of talent of technical team. But my suggestion will be everybody needs to put their hands on the game. If you have ethical background, if you have privacy background, please don't be hesitant to speak about within your organization, because your organization needs your help, your expertise. I think this is really important to put this as a one team support, not just a one team game. I mean, this is like an AI team.
Okay, I think we have to leave it there. So thank you so much, Sedef, for sharing your perspective with us, and it's a great conversation.
Well, thanks, everyone. If you have any questions, please feel free to find me after that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pippa and Dr. Sedef, for that fascinating conversation on AI safeguards and governance. I can't believe we're at our final session for the day. I hope you're having fun. You're having fun? Yeah, okay, like that. So for our final session, we'd like to look forward at the future of AI. We'll explore how each one of us can play a role in shaping a new era of innovation and how to implement this technology. To discuss this topic, please join me in welcoming two experts to the stage. We have AI optimist, Joy Strohan. And from IBM Canada, we have their Vice President of Technical Sales and Chief Technology Officer, Manav Gupta. Manav and Joyce, thank you so much for being here with me today. And a housekeeping note before we get started, we'll have a few minutes after our conversation for some audience questions as well, so keep thinking about them. I'm kind of excited about this conversation because I usually leave this kind of question to the end of a panel, but we get to look to the future first to begin with. So when you think about the future of AI, what do you see? Joyce, let's start with you. What does it look like?
Yeah, thank you so much. I put my title down as AI optimist because actually that's what I think the future is going to hold. And I've actually spent a lot of time talking about the positives of what AI is going to bring. And maybe if I just start out with AI being a general purpose technology, so like the internet. So the internet has a lot of problems with it. There's hate on there, there's bias on there, there is fraud, there's crime, but we're all going to use it 50 times a day later today, aren't we? And so because of that, I think that we have to be optimistic. There's always going to be problems when a new transformational technology comes out. And so we just need to be cognizant of them, we need to prepare for them, we need to look at them, and there's going to be new things coming out. So AI, I think the last study that Deloitte did showed that Canada, in a business sense, was only adopting AI, the old AI or the new AI, at 26%. It's pretty low. And globally, it's only 34%. So I think that, who here has used ChatGPT? Ah, congratulations, look, you all adopted Gen AI. Now, look how hard it is to do at work, right? So you've all adopted it now. So I think that that's one of the big things that's going to come out in the next while is how do you look at AI in two ways? There's specialized AI, like our colleague from RBC was talking about around fraud detection and things like that. And then there's general AI that is for all of us and what we're going to be working on. How do we make ourselves more productive? How do we use it as an assistant for what we do? How do we get it to train us, onboard us, all that stuff that makes us not just more productive, but have a better day. And I think the number one use case that they're showing for Gen AI right now is companion and therapy, right? So interestingly enough, you know, these are the things that are going to help you throughout the day when we're doing things either remotely, and you have an assistant that helps you do most of your work. I just wanted to also say that one of the futures of AI is actually also going to be, you know, I worked for the Ontario government for a couple of years, and one of the questions always was, is it going to get rid of our jobs, right? And that's one of the questions that people ask. The future is, it's not going to get rid of all your jobs, but people who use AI are going to eliminate people who don't use AI. That's the tagline for the day. So that's what eliminates people. The ones that use AI will eliminate the ones that do not use AI to do their work.
Okay, so that's an optimistic take with some caveats, but it's still overall optimistic. Manav, what's your take? What does the future of AI look like to you?
Sure. So I'm just going to build on this answer a little bit. But in order to go forward, let's just take a step back. So AI as a term has existed, any guesses how many years? 25. So AI, the term was coined in 1956. So it's existed for quite a while. And then we've seen various evolutions of AI, right? AI, the genetic way of training the machine to mimic human behavior. In the 70s, these were the if-then statements, rule-based engines, right? In the 80s and 90s, they became a bit more sophisticated. We started calling them machine learning as a field, right, where we had statistical algorithms. And then we started getting into language processing. We were able to do very simple next word or next token prediction. And then famously in 2017, we had the breakthrough that allowed a more complex sentence and relationship between the sentences to be interpreted as if a human would do it, right? And that brings us to today, which is we're all talking about AI today because a very narrow sliver of AI, known as large language models, that are largely trained on language or text data, are optimized to predict the next token. That's a lot of words to say. The AI that you're talking to is just doing a fantastic job of trawling through all of the humanities corpus that has been thrown at it and predicting the next word just as how humans mimic and do it in our real lives. So that's 101. So at this point, we're all university graduates, and we all know how generative AI works. Okay, so where do I think that this technology is going? So up until so far, since 2022 November, I think the world has seen, I'll say, two camps evolve. There is a camp of, let's build the biggest, baddest model that there is, right? The proprietary, also known as state-of-the-art models. And then something interesting happened. the open source world got hold of one of the models. And then we started seeing really tremendous amount of innovation happening within the industry. So small language models, I would submit to you, is going to be the future. So especially for businesses, you're not going to require a fantastically large, multi-trillion parameter model to do every task. Whether it's things like claims processing, fraud detection, customer acquisition, smaller purpose-built model that you augment with your enterprise data is going to give you near or better performance compared to a generic state-of-the-art language model or state-of-the-art language model. That's where the industry is today. Next 2 years are going to go, or maybe next 5 years are going to go into what the industry is besotted by, known as AI agents. And I know you heard that term several times. An AI agent is nothing but a piece of logic that's codified into a program with some agency or with some authority to take an action on your behalf. So this absolutely, so this term that I absolutely despise, prompt engineering, is dead, right? That engineering word of that is now encoded into the so-called agent that's doing a task for you. So we'll see the evolution of that. In parallel, what you're going to see is these LLMs, these language models, are going to get better and better. And you'll begin to see an inflection of engineering of intelligence, if I call it that loosely. That is going to merge with engineering of biology. In other words, humanoids. So the next frontier that we're going to see is the emergence or the confluence of tech with biology into these humanoids. But that's about 10 plus years out. So where you'll see from an industry, I'll say enterprise perspective, is purpose-built small language models that are energy efficient, that you can deploy in an environment or a cloud of your choice, where you can safely augment your data within the enterprise and use it in a manner that is auditable, that is repeatable, that satisfies the regulators. So I apologize for the long answer, but that's where I see the industry going.
It's a very detailed roadmap. And so maybe we'll just pick out a few things and unpack them. On AI agents, you I think had a 2-year roadmap, right? We're in the early innings of this. Joyce, what do you think is the potential of AI agents that we still need to unlock?
Yeah, I mean, the potential of AI agents really is here's going to be a piece of code now that's going to learn, it's going to adapt, and then it's going to act for you. Here we do the non-optimistic side where you say it actually is autonomous now. So where are you going to put these things that make it actually safe to use? How do you want to deploy them? We always talk about human in the loop. Human is not in the loop with the agents now. So when I can't remember which presentation it was, but they said, let's do human in the loop, and we're going to do agents. So the two don't match, and we need to have a way, and the future will have more programs that will be able to constitutionalize agency work, where we can say we're programming it a certain way, and it's a hard line. Because right now, with a lot of machine learning, it just takes the average of whatever it's learning, the pile of information it takes, and it goes, it's number 5, and it's going to be number 5. And I keep learning that until it becomes number 6, or it becomes number 4. And we're going to have a future where for some of these agents, particularly if we use them, I can see the first use case in agents be in cybersecurity. Because let's be honest, most of your organizations aren't working 24/7 to figure out whether or not you're going to be hacked. The Ontario government, I think that there was 2.5 billion cyber attempts a year. That is not, Bob and Amin sitting there looking at when stuff is coming in. We need AI to actually manage that. So that will be some kind of agentic AI. You'll wake up in the morning and you'll see what happened and what actions those AI agents took. So there's going to have to be a huge level of trust and understanding of how that's going to go. And the ability for AI agents to unlock one person working like 10 people. So we talk about these being your new digital colleagues, right? What did your digital colleagues do for you at nighttime, and then you woke up in the morning and then it was working 24/7? So the potential is massive. We're a small country, we're a medium-sized country, and we do need these things to increase our level of productivity and economic prosperity as we move forward. So we're gonna have to start embracing it. So that 26% where we didn't even adopt, traditional predictive AI, it's a big leap to get from 26% of using that to now using generative AI. And that's why I asked you the question at the very beginning. You all are using generative AI now. So it's weird when I talk to colleagues when they're using it at home, doing all this stuff, putting their vacations together and everything else, and then they come to work going, we are not using it here. Do you got that? We're not using it, and we're not using it until someone tells me and the government tells me how I'm going to use it. And until I do that, then I'm not going to use it here. And so it's a very odd kind of work self and home self that we need to kind of get over. And if we don't get over that, that 26% is going to keep going down over time. And so agents are a big deal with that. It is not human in the loop anymore. At that point in time, you're going to need to trust that whoever put that agent in there did it the way that you wanted it to go in.
Our work self is not our home self. That's an interesting take.
Our home self.
Anav, what's your take on that?
Okay, so again, let's take a step back. So the NoviPro's IT trends report, it talked about 81% of C-level execs have made an investment or about to make a significant investment in AI. So I think the hype is real. So over the course of next, I said don't hold me to it, 2 to 5 years, I suspect. A lot of how we do work today, especially in white-collar workers where there is a large corpus of text, that's going to change. So, and I think AI agents is such an overloaded term, similar to what prompt engineering was, that maybe it's important to understand what we mean by that. So you have today bespoke programs, homegrown or SaaS or whatever, that do a certain task. An ERP, an HR, a travel assistant, mortgage advisor, and so on and so forth. There is a lot of decision-making and intelligence that's built into that program on behalf of a human, and there's a human that's acting on that. If we were to redefine and redesign it in a way that it uses an LLM, a large language model, with some level of agency or autonomy, and it does a task for us, so in theory, it frees the human up, is an AI agent, very simply speaking. So I think what we'll begin to see is initial decomposition of human task, and then aggregation of tasks to the point that, for example, I should be, instead of doing a Google search, which if you think about it, is such an archaic way of planning a vacation, because all that task is unloaded onto you. But I just have a travel assistant, a vacation planner agent. Here's where I want to go. Here are my dates. Go do all the search that I would do. Find the right hotel with the right beach, the right amenities, and so on and so forth. I think that's what we'll begin to see. But you said something really interesting, that our work self and our home self are personal.
Oh, I'm not going to take credit for that. That was all Joyce.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting dichotomy that exists today. So as it happens in technological trends, the consumer space is undergoing phenomenal advancements, whereas within the enterprise, because of all the things that we all as humans want, auditability, traceability, can you truly tell me that a loan was declined because the AI or the system that made a decision was not biased against me because of my color, age, race, whatever. So I think those are guardrails that we are all going to require. So what we need to understand, all of us here, is that we all need to become AI value creators rather than consumers. Just using a GPT, chat or otherwise, is not good enough. You all have to understand in your own terms, there are small language models available that you can run on your laptops. So we will all have to become some level of value creators so we understand how this tech works. And then we begin to understand why the work self and the personal self are two different entities.
Let's talk a little bit about humanoid robots. Joyce, you're the optimist. How will this help Canadian organizations with our notoriously weak productivity?
Robots in general?
Humanoid robots.
Humanoid robots. Well,
that was one of the predictions, right?
Yeah, that's right. I don't know if they'll all be humanoid. So I'm sure you've all seen the Boston Dynamics, dogs and robots that are kind of dancing around. That invention actually came out of when the Fukushima nuclear plant, the tsunami hit it after the megathrust earthquake. And what happened is it something in Japan where they had all these little robots who did all kinds of stuff. No one came to save the nuclear plant. All you had to do was turn some dials, close some doors, flip some switches, and nothing was able to do that. So DARPA actually put out a contest to see who could get a rescue robot going, and actually, without being able to get up by itself, go through terrain, walk around. That probably won't be the first level of robot that we'll be talking about. We already have robots. They do like laser eye surgery. My Roomba cleans up my golden retriever's dog hair on the ground. So there's already kinds of robots, and they will be like various types. And right now we have artificial intelligence, and the next thing will be artificial body. And we'll need to decide what parts of that artificial body, whether it takes a humanoid view or whether or not it needs to. Those rescue robots, some of them took kind of human form. Some of them had like little, rollers like a tractor. Some of them had various ways. I think as humans, we kind of make things that look human because we think that we want to see it that way. So there will be various instances where we think that artificial intelligence will have to take some kind of form to express itself, to touch the environment, to understand what it is. And the Fukushima nuclear plant's a great example. We couldn't go in. No one could go in because of the radiation levels. That was a perfect example when if a robot went in and just turned some dials and flipped some switches, a lot of people wouldn't have died. And so that was a good example of what would happen at that particular time. Some of them just used little pincers and things that turned dials and turned knobs. So I'd say that the future is coming soon. I don't know if it's exactly going to match up with biology, but the part that will is that AI will start to look at how we engineer different types of biology that goes around right now. So that development is going to change who actually is able to own that type of activity.
That's really interesting. I want to talk about how prepared are we really for this future of AI that we've been talking about extensively. Canada has been known to be slow when it comes to tech adoption. We're really good at AI research. The adoption, as you pointed out, could be better. There's a lot of upside, maybe. So, Manav, what's your take on that? Is Canada ready? Are organizations ready? Are humans ready for this future that we've been talking about?
I think that's a great question. So, look, certainly the hype is real. And as an immigrant to Canada, and I love this country, I do think that Canadians in general, we tend to be a bit more cautious. We love our POCs, right? We love to trial. So the scaling of AI and adoption of AI is still in front of us. But a lot of these type of surveys, like the NoviPro report that I talked about, I think those are good indicators that we are now beginning to get serious about this tech, that this is not just a flash in the pan, and that we can absolutely get some productivity out of it. I think the other thing that we are blessed with is a government that is supportive of these type of initiatives. So certainly with the investments in the things like CFAR as an example, the various research institutions that we have, I think that's a good signal that we take this seriously. We certainly have good availability of talent in the country as well. And then, knock on wood, we still have light touch regulation, which is what the industry needs in order to truly get the productivity that we need. So if you assemble it all together, I think the opportunity and the onus is on us as stakeholders and business owners in this room to then determine how can we implement this in a safe manner in our organizations. I mean, you're clearly going to have a small number of large language models because you're going to have some general purpose use cases. But really, you're also going to have a large number of small language models that are going to be purpose-built, specific to your use case, that you can augment with your data, so you can satisfy the regulators, the CISO, so you can satisfy your users, absolutely, right? And then you can deploy them such that the economics of those make sense to you. So that's what makes me quite hopeful about the Canadian business and our productivity.
Okay, a message of hope. Joyce, what about you? What do you think we could all be doing to better prepare for the future of AI as we've laid out?
Yeah, I think that a few of the speakers have talked about this, AI literacy. So educating ourselves, continually educating ourselves on how to use AI, how to better create the prompts that need to happen so you get the best answer possible and the best thing. You can save a lot of time. One of the hot takes in terms of finishing off a prompt that you'll ask ChatGPT is just say, do you have any clarifying questions? So then you force it to actually ask you back. And it says, oh, what's your target audience? What date range do you want to look at? And it's like, oh, I didn't think about that. And so you kind of do a sweep question at the very end to actually do that. I think that the main thing in terms of adopting AI in the future is to not always look at the ROI at the very beginning. We all have cell phones and laptops at work now. And if you remember, if you're old enough like me, you remember a time when I actually looked at the first laptop that ever rolled out. It was about 35 pounds. And not all of us got one because it was too expensive for all of us. But eventually we all got one. And no one said, hey, what's the ROI on you? What ROI did you get on your iPhone today, right? So everybody got one because they know that there was a general productivity that it created throughout your organization. AI will be the same that way. And so I feel like it's almost like a little bit of an excuse when people say, oh, unless you give me an ROI, we're not going to roll out that AI tool. And so it's too difficult sometimes at the very beginning because the length of time to find out what that ROI is crazy. It was easier for optical character recognition when people actually read checks and stuff. Because when I was at Deloitte and we were rolling out something for a client, they go, I can't believe it's the accuracy is only 95%. And then I said, the humans were only 70, right? And so the bar was really high to roll out AI. It was actually people wanted it to be 100%, even though humans were 70. And so it's an interesting thing that we just need to make sure that we're not holding it necessarily to a higher bar sometimes than what current state is. It needs to be higher, but it's not going to be 100%. Like, let's be honest, it's not going to be 100%. But it's going to need to be what we need to move forward.
I don't think we can talk about the future of AI without talking a little bit about the geopolitical environment. And so my colleague, Joe Castaldo, wrote about how, if you haven't read this article, you should, Canada's changing relationship with the US has kind of awakened companies here to the issue of data sovereignty. In other words, the security of their data and concerns about the potential reach of the US on our data. Manav, what do you think are the implications of that for Canada's AI future?
I think that's an exceedingly good question, especially in the current geopolitical climates that not just Canada, but Canada in particular faces. So the Canadian government, as well as many other governments around the world, they're all embarking on what is being variously known as AI sovereignty. Right? It initially started with cloud sovereignty or sovereign clouds, but really the crux of it is if it is data about Canadians living in Canada, consuming services in Canada, funded by taxes that are being paid in Canada for the betterment of the Canadian society, then perhaps that collective knowledge should be owned by Canadians. If you flip that on its head, though, Canada also enjoys a very large portion of academia and academic investment into AI. So I think we have a vast opportunity to take all this data that we have at our disposal and the researchers that we have at our disposal to build AI. I mean, back to my assertion that we all must experiment with AI. So this is our opportunity, right? So rather than relying on closed state-of-the-art models that we have limited access to, that we cannot monitor, that you cannot govern, all the previous discussions around biases and so on, you can turn that narrative around and start using open source models that are smaller, purpose-built, that you can tune with your data and deploy it within the Canadian boundaries, right? That respond to our regulation, that we can monitor, and then we can adhere to the legal frameworks that were talked about previously. So that's how I would start looking at it.
I've been told that we're actually out of time, and unfortunately, we don't have time for a Q&A, but maybe if there are audience members who want to ask you questions directly afterwards, they can approach Manav and Joyce. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible outlooks on the future of AI. This was such a fascinating conversation. Can we give them a round of applause?
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Before we close out the event, we'd like to have Alain Cormier, Chief Executive Officer of Novipro Group, provide some closing remarks. Please join me in welcoming Alain.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us today. And it was really an honor for the Novipro Group to sponsor this event. I will do a quick closing of today, trying to get back through what's been said today. It's always good to repeat these messages. So today, with all the participants in the different panels and interviews, it is clear that AI, it's not a buzzword, but it's there and it's real. As business leader, I think we must adopt AI. And today, when we look at the adoption in Canada, we're not there. And often we mention the IT trend report that we've been sponsoring for 9 years. But when we look at the respondent, 30% of the respondents feel that either their business processes or their industry's been already impacted by AI. So it's there, it's real, and we must consider that in our strategy. If we are not acting on it or taking action, moving forward with it, it will impact our competitiveness in this market. And quickly, we spoke about the geopolitical situation that we are, and it's even more important today to act on this. Listening to the different participants, I didn't hear many people saying that AI will replace jobs, that will let people go. Actually, AI will help companies to scale up and to respond at the market and at the growth that they're facing. So that's really important, one thing to keep. And there's a lot of people that are afraid about AI looking at it. When we look at, if we can move to the next chart. So when we look at the study that we've done, there was 3 things that really came up at the top why people were looking at AI was increased productivity, automate tasks, and reduce operating costs. But in the first panel, one thing that I learned or I heard quite often was we wanted to use AI to improve clients' experience. To handle large amount of data. So there are other things that we can leverage and that could be beneficial for our businesses. So again, we need to think towards what are those use cases that we can leverage. Things that I learned about how we should plan our strategy. Well, we need to identify use cases. And again, don't try to boil the ocean. Start with those small use cases. Get benefits out of it, get used to AI, and then build on that. Quality of data, it's one thing. It's also something that we need to consider, but also how we will secure and govern that data. It's key, and this is kind of what we heard in the second portion of the session. Change management, like any other technology project, we're changing life of our employees. We need to manage the human. They need to understand. They need to see what's next for them. And it's often in technology projects we're forgetting about the change management and we're thinking that employees understand. And just because we told them, they will move forward with it. So let's make sure we're managing our employees. And I don't remember who mentioned it, but get assistance. And there's something when we're looking at lack of expertise within our enterprise, and this is one thing that it's slowing down the adoption, well, get assistance. There are people that are specialized and can help you on that. On topic of what's slowing down the adoption of AI, there's 3 major things that is coming up. Yes, there's the cost. And often, I think sometimes we're only looking at the cost, we're not looking at the return on investment. Even though there are some cases, maybe we should invest anyway. The other piece is lack of expertise, yes, but data privacy and security is key. And this is something that is slowing down adoption. People are afraid what will happen with the data. So data quality is great, security, governance, it's important. Listening at some mistakes on governance that's been made, and that was educational for me, is governance, it's a continuous process. It's not something that you do once when you're looking at AI, but you need to keep on doing it. The other piece is not a single team that is responsible for that governance. There's multiple teams involved in all the different departments in a company. So it's important to get everybody on board in that governance. And it's everything about the ethic. I think it's important, and often we will forget about that, but starting looking at ethic when you start your AI journey. That's one thing that's really key. And a little thing, and I think it was great, and keep in mind sustainability. So yes, asking what we will be eating tonight based on what's in the fridge, or maybe there's better use of AI that we can do. Listening about what's the future for AI. So yes, multiple smaller LLM models, AI agent. We're hearing about that, we're seeing it. Technology and biology, I'm looking forward to see that. But one message I heard in the last panel is are we prepared? And I think we are. It's only up to us to jump in and adopt AI. And don't be afraid. The competitiveness of our companies depends on it. If we're not doing it and our competitors is using AI to get better, we will have a technology debt and it will be hard to go over that. So that's really the message today. It's important, it's there, it's real, and we need to adopt it. If we move to the last chart, small message, you've been hearing about it, the IT trend story. This is a journey that the NoviPro group started 10 years ago. When we look at building that IT trends, there was two main reasons why we jumped on it. There wasn't a study that was solely looking at the Canadian market. Often it was the North American market. So we decided to build that study. The other reason is we wanted to provide added value to the community. So this is a free study that we've been doing for 9 years. So this is the 9th edition. This is great data. Today we were talking about AI, but that IT trend study covers HR, cover cybersecurity, the cloud, and modernization. So there's a lot of information that you can gather as part of that. So I'm inviting you to scan the QR code, download it. The 8 previous versions are also available. So I invite you as well to look at it. Again, we see based on roundtables that we've done with our clients and prospects, they're using that study for planning for this year, next year, and where they will be investing in technology. So on that, I would like to say thank you to the Globe and Mail event for this event. That was great. Thank you for everybody that got involved. And I hope to see you at the, for people who are in the room, to see you at the networking reception right after. And you can come and visit us in our kiosk and ask questions to our partners as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Elaine. On behalf of the Globe and Mail, I would like to thank NoviPro Group for sponsoring today's event, for making today possible. I would also like to thank all of our panelists and speakers for their valuable insights, and our audience for listening in. I thought it was a really great day of conversations about a very important topic. Was anyone else, maybe it's just me because I'm an innovation journalist turned personal finance editor, but was anyone else relieved to hear Dr. Fotani say, if we're ever in financial distress, you don't have to expect a bot to answer? We'll be sending out a survey regarding today's event. We'd greatly appreciate if you could take a minute to complete it and give us some feedback on how it went. For virtual attendees, look out for a QR code that will allow you to complete it. There will be a link to the recorded webcast if you just didn't get enough of today. That'll be sent to all registered participants within the next 2 weeks, so look out for that. Thank you again to everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day. For our in-house audience, please grab a drink, a snack, make some great connections at our networking session right outside these doors. Thank you.